The only thing that I worry about is that nobody cares about the answers to the mystery. I'm Hightower, and this is Hightower's Hangout, where Star Wars is analyzed with clarity, context, and respect for the legacy. Super Bowl was yesterday, which was February 8th, 2026, and there was a teaser trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu in it. As far as content goes, there's not much to it. But today I'll be reading an article that came out for the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer that premiered yesterday during the Super Bowl. The article comes from Gizmodo. The article is titled, "The new Mandalorian and Grogu teaser is all about the journey." After a vibes-heavy first look last year, fans might have expected the new Star Wars movie to show up to the Super Bowl with something to tell. Alas. It may be just 4 months or so away, but much of The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first Star Wars film since 2019's The Rise of Skywalker, remains shrouded in mystery. But after we got a very broad teaser that leaned more on Star Wars familiarity than telling us what's up with our titular heroes, people would have expected that our next look at the film would at least give us a little more of an inkling about what's pulling Din and his ward back into the fight. But don't expect that just yet. So, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I'm not really a sports guy. And for several other reasons, I elect not to watch it. So, as far as my headspace, I guess, when I saw the trailer on YouTube after the fact, wasn't really in the Super Bowl commercial mindset. I was expecting something more epic. The trailer itself honed in on being more comedic and familiar as far as branding goes. It almost felt like the commercial should have had a Budweiser logo at the end of it, which honestly, I think if Budweiser had partnered with Disney for this would have been a phenomenal Super Bowl commercial. But one has to respect the quality of commercials that Budweiser has put out for years. There are some parallels between the basic concept of the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer and nearly all of the Budweiser commercials. So we'll continue on and then we'll get into it a little bit more. During the Super Bowl, Lucasfilm released the latest teaser for The Mandalorian and Grogu. Set after the events of the streaming series' third season, the movie follows up on Din Djarin, Pedro Pascal, gotta make sure we name him, and the youngling Grogu after their retirement to Navarro in the wake of the re-liberation of Mandalore, and Din's newest job working as a freelance agent of the burgeoning New Republic. This teaser, however, it's still vibes. It's just this time it's in the snow. You know, it talks about it being the vibe of the Mandalorian and Grogu. There was no vibe other than feeling like there should have been a alcohol commercial at the end of this. That, quite frankly, is the only vibe that I got. The new teaser comes after practically months of silence in the initial trailer. Judas Priest, I can't fucking read today, bud. The new teaser comes after practically months of silence since the initial trailer, a tactic that The Mandalorian is more than familiar with, maintaining an air of secrecy for as much as possible in the run-up to each season's debut on Disney+. Even as the new film draws even closer, it looks like we're still going to have to wait to see what makes the film worth heading out to theaters for instead of a fourth season on Disney+. it being Star Wars should be enough for people to go to the movie theaters to see this. When Lucasfilm was run by George Lucas and was in its heyday, you wouldn't have to worry about people going and seeing it. I'm sure George did, and I know that George did, and I know that the people who worked on Star Wars were worried about people going and seeing it. But once A New Hope struck, then everything fell into place because there were caretakers for it. Unfortunately, Lucasfilm has lost its way, and so Star Wars is derelict in space. So it is disconcerting to think of what the outcome may be for this beloved franchise, because they just don't know how to make Star Wars content. It's not a cash cow. The Mandalorian and Grogu, which also stars Sigourney Weaver as New Republic officer Colonel Ward, and Jeremy Allen White as Clone Wars character Rhoda the Hutt, hits theaters May 22nd. Okay, so that's the extent of the article. So let's watch the trailer here.
Sometimes we choose our path. Other times the path chooses us. Through it all, we keep pushing forward, driven by a deeper purpose, guided by an unseen force. The journey never gets any easier. The bond just gets harder to break. This is the way.
Only in theaters and IMAX May 22nd.
So after watching that fresh, as far as it being an advertisement, it serves the purpose of it creating, I guess, maybe some conversation about The Mandalorian and Grogu. As far as the trailer giving us any information as to what we could expect or speculate on as far as content of the film, it doesn't give us anything, which is fine. I'm going to dive into a couple of things here that do bother me about the trailer, but I think something important to note is the context of the trailer. While I do believe that Star Wars should always be at a higher level, at a level of excellency, Super Bowl commercials, in my opinion, at least back in the heyday of the Super Bowl, that ended probably like 2008, 2009, maybe a few after that. But Super Bowl commercials were always funny. And I think that was the idea behind this trailer, was to hit more of a Super Bowl vibe, really, than a Star Wars vibe. Other than the characters and the music, this was a Budweiser commercial. And with that being said, I mean, the Budweiser commercial that I saw with the baby Clydesdale and the baby bald eagle, that was epic. It hit all the marks that you would expect a Budweiser commercial to. And I think really that's what the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer was trying to do. So I'm going to back up the video a little bit and just talk on some of the things that I like, some of the things I don't. So right off the bat, in the scene where the camera pans up, it gives a very Old West vibe. As you look, through the desert, it can be snowy and still be a desert. We look up and see the path created going through the valley. An overhead shot of the carriage or the stagecoach being pulled by some livestock. Again, so I wouldn't say I'm a big Western fan, but I enjoy the genre of Westerns. I think if there wasn't such thing as Star Wars, a lot of my time would be put into Western films. But I digress. So, again, the cinematography of this, I think they did a really excellent job. I couldn't tell you what for an example, but this image with the sun behind them, the dust, I mean, obviously it's snow being blown around, but this would work in a desert scene or this would work in a winter desert scene as it does here. So again, I'm disappointed in that it wasn't more of an epic trailer, but for what the purpose was behind them doing this and the context of it, I understand. This portion where it shows the tauntauns breathing and then their feet and their claws is very reminiscent of Budweiser commercials of showing the Clydesdales breathing, showing their hooves as they're pulling along the Budweiser carriage. You know, I think now that I'm rewatching it and breaking it down a little bit, where we start to see Din and Grogu is I think where I start to have most of my problem. Din just looks unnatural in this sequence. I think that really comes from him just looking too pristine, as if they took the costume right out of, storage or right off the press and to film this trailer, which I'm sure is what they did, but Star Wars of old prided itself on pretty decent continuity and the world looking like it's being lived in. It's a little bit of a slippery slope of them starting to just look like a superhero, which there are no superheroes in Star Wars. I also know that Obi-Wan Kenobi would be disappointed in Grogu for reaching over and taking the reins with the Force, as he would have been disappointed in Anakin for showing off cutting pears with the Force. So the Tauntaun models look well. They look like they're well done. Tauntauns are probably one of my favorite creatures in Star Wars. Looking at the end image here of the Tauntauns pulling the stagecoach, I feel like I want to have a problem with the scaling of the Tauntauns to Din Djarin, but I think that for scale, they appear to be about the right size. When I initially saw it, they seemed very small. After having watched this trailer a few times, I've become more comfortable with the size of the Tauntauns compared to Din Djarin. So to me, this ending screen is memorable. So now this last image of Grogu reaching up and touching the snout of the Tauntaun, it harkens back to Season 1 and Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Hopefully we get to see Grogu go back to his roots and explore some more of the elemental capabilities that he has. So that's the extent of the trailer. Obviously there's not much to it as far as story goes or plot goes, which I think that the article hits the nail on the head, so to speak. It creates mystery. The only thing that I worry about is that nobody cares about the answers to the mystery. That I see as being the biggest issue, is that people have forgotten, or Baby Yoda, Grogu is old news. I feel like the buy-in has gone down. That's essentially what I'm trying to find, is that the buy-in for what happens to Grogu has gone down. So that is all that I have for today. There's a couple of videos coming down the pipeline, working through those and editing those. As far as the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer, let me know what your thoughts are. Is Star Wars okay to be a Super Bowl style beer commercial? Or should Star Wars remain epic and not bow to modern traditions? I appreciate you all hanging out and watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Hightower, and this is Hightower's Hangout, where I analyze Star Wars with context, clarity, and respect for for the legacy. May the Force be with you, and as always, I will see you in a galaxy far, far away.